Morning, guys. Okay, so I did say we were going to start on the problem solving, but I do just want to address the issue of this fabulous thing, a calculator. A few of you have told me you do not have access to calculators. First of all, I have advised that you needed to get a scientific calculator from the beginning of the year. You are currently doing your GCSEs. I would expect you to get a calculator. You don't need this one exactly, but you do need a calculator, okay? And a scientific one. Another thing, I have put a link into Google Classroom, which actually shows you how to get onto a calculator online. And thirdly, for those guys that depend on this calculator, all you have to do, put it to its side. There you go, trig. Okay, and if you want the inverse, there it is, the inverse. Okay, so guys, when you don't have access to specific things, one, the first time you ask me, you should be able to recall that information. Secondly, Google is your friend. You should be able to use Google. Okay? It's not that hard to find a tool online to help you get onto trig. The reason why this is part of your maths kit is one, you have it to hand. Two, you're able to walk into an exam with it. But otherwise, there are many tools that have trig functions on them. You should be able to use it. Even if you're reduced to doing it on Google Sheets. Google Sheets also has a function for trigonometry. Okay, so for those people that weren't able to access this, you guys are going to have quite a bit of catching up to do. Okay? But anyway, on to problem solving. Okay, so we're going to start doing wordy stuff. You will notice this is not the same sheet as the one I am going to pop onto the classroom. I'm going to have basic problem solving wordy kind of questions. I'm also going to have an extension question which utilizes trig as well as Pythagoras. Okay, so for those people that want to try the extension, I am just going to tell you, you probably want to focus on that extension because it does take a little bit of time. Okay, if you want to practice a couple of these and then just work on the extension, that's fine. I would say double check what you're doing because the extension, if you get one mistake, it will just kind of wreck it for everything else. Also, second thing, if you are working on the extension, do not round up until you get to the end. Okay? Yeah, for those people doing the extension, it will make sense. If you're not doing it, don't worry about it. Let's focus on this. Okay, so I'm just going to run through a couple of these questions and then you just need to crack on, have fun. Okay, so say if I just get started on question 1. So it says question 1, a ladder 6.8 meters long leans against vertical wall of a house. The foot of the ladder is 1.4 meters from the wall on the horizontal ground. Calculate to the nearest degree the size of angle X. Okay, so I've got 6A. So this is my X. This is 6.8 and this is 1.4. Okay, so I need to find X. Nice and easy. Let's label up our triangle as opposite. This is my hypotenuse. This is my adjacent. So when I'm looking at sine, cosine, and tangent, well, I've got the adjacent, got the hypotenuse, don't have the opposite. So I'm going to have cosine. Okay, and because I'm looking for the angle, I've got to cover up the cosine theta, and then cosine theta will be adjacent over hypotenuse. So cosine theta is adjacent over hypotenuse. Obviously, I just want the theta. I don't want that cosine, so I'm going to say theta is the inverse cosine of A over H. This step you can do afterwards, or you can do it first, your choice entirely. And now I'm just going to substitute all these values into here. So instead of theta, I'm going to put x. Cosine stays as it is. Instead of A, I'm going to put 1.4. And instead of hypotenuse, I'm going to put 6.8. Okay, so we've got shift, cosine, so 1.4 and 6.8. Okay, so you should have 78.1188 ... Okay, so that is equal to, because it doesn't actually give me a degree of accuracy on there, I'm just going to choose 2 decimal places. So I'm going to say 78.12 degrees to 2 decimal places. Most of the time in exams, it will have 2 decimal places or it's 3 significant figures. Okay, so that is my angle. The next thing it tells me to do, it says calculate the height of the top of the ladder above the ground to the nearest centimetre. Okay, so there's actually 2 ways of doing this one. It's entirely up to you. So I've got 1.4, 6.8. It's a right angle triangle. So you could use trig or you could use Pythagoras. Okay, this is one reason why Pythagoras and trig are taught together, because because it's a right angle triangle, sometimes you can actually use Pythagoras, sometimes you can use trigonometry. Okay, but with this, do I still have the answer? Yes, okay. So because I still have this answer, I'm just going to use the trig. So I'm going to say 78.11. I am not going to use this number. I am going to use the answer within my calculator, because if I use this number, I'm using an approximation, which means the next answer will be inaccurate. So this is my opposite, this is my adjacent, that's my hypotenuse. Because I need the opposite, that means I can use, because I've got all 3 sides now, I can otherwise use sine or I can use tangent. It doesn't really matter which one I use, but I do need the opposite. So I'm just going to use sine in this case. So because it's the opposite, I need sine of the angle multiplied by h. So opposite is sine theta multiplied by the hypotenuse. Okay, so O equals sine, and I'm going to put 78.11 ... because I'm not using the rounded answer, I'm using the exact answer, multiplied by 6.8. Okay, so because you will notice in my calculator it actually says answer up there. So that means when I type it into the equation, I'm going to use the answer key just down here. If you don't have an answer key, you should have memories and you should be able to store it in the memory. So if I wanted to store it into A, B, C, or D, E, or F, then I'd be using A, B, C, D, blah, blah. But because I've got it in answer, I'm just going to use the answer key. So when I type it out, it will be... So it will look like that and it will say sine answer, but this answer is just this number here, okay? So the answer is 6.65432 ... Okay, which is 6.65 to 2 decimal places. Okay, hopefully that should make sense. So when they are talking about different things, or first thing you need to do is see whether they're asking for an angle or a side. If they're asking for an angle, you will always be using trigonometry. Okay, and then if they're asking for a side, sometimes, like in this case, I could potentially use Pythagoras, but I could also use trigonometry if I have the angle. So this would show that there's more than one way of getting to the answer. It's entirely up to you how you get there. Okay, but I'm choosing to use trig for both of them. So you just need to be aware of that when you're applying them to these types of questions. And I would say make sure you are aware of your math knowledge, because when they are talking about triangles and everything else, they are still expecting you to know about other things about triangles. So if... one example being, say, if they gave an isosceles and they told you that this was 6 meters and this was 4, and they told you to find the perpendicular height, you would kind of use that, right? And then you've got a triangle that looks, well, if they told you to find the angle or something, so then you would say, well, that's x, this is 6, and this would be 2 because it's an isosceles, okay? Or say if they gave you an equilateral triangle and they told you to do something, you should be aware that this is 60 degrees because it's an equilateral triangle. Okay, so you will be asked to use mathematical knowledge that you have learned previously in your previous years. So always be aware of that, especially when it comes to geometry. They are asking you to be aware of prior math knowledge and to be able to apply it. So if you do have any questions, let me know. But otherwise, I will just let you crack on with the work. And obviously, those people that need to catch up, you need to do this as well as all the catch up, because if you haven't done the work previously, you need to ensure that you've done it. Okay? Take care, guys.